Chamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Didi Vadada Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Didi Vadada Yashodanandana Brajajanaranda Yashodanandana Brajajanaranda Chamunatira Chamunatira Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Jaya Kodanitai, Jaya Maya Bosasi Jaya, Kodanitai, Maya Bosasi Jaya. Jaya Sri Tulsina, Jaya Sri Tulsina, Sri Tulsina, Jaya Sri Tulsina, Jaya Giridhari Ram, Giridhari Ram, Giridhari Ram, Jaya Giridhari Jaya Nrsinghare, 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 Nrsinghare. Jaya Vrindadevi, Jaya Vrindadevi, Jaya Vrindadevi, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shishikudnatai Mai Pusha Shiki Jai, Shri Tulsinath Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Giriraj Lal Ki Jai, Shri Mati Vrindadevi Ki Jai, Shri Nismadev Bhagwan Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Granth Sahib Shri Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Jai Gaura Saranam. Sorry? Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lila Amrita, Preaching to America, Part 2. Srila Prabhupada's in Dallas. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. While walking near White Rock Lake, the morning he was to leave for New Orleans, Srila Prabhupada dropped behind the main group of devotees and said to his servant, "I'm not feeling well." The few sannyasis close by pressed near him with concern. "Yesterday also," he added. "It is due to the heat, Srila Prabhupada. I do not know why, but now I am feeling headache and some spasm. Should we cancel the trip this morning?" Srila Prabhupada didn't answer. He admitted, however, the heat may have weakened his digestion. When asked if the food was to his liking, he replied, "Not very all right. Constantly change of hand is not good." Brahmananda Swami suggested that another difficulty for health was the constant flying. But when he again suggested postponing the flight to New Orleans, Srila Prabhupada said, no, and continued forward. July 31st. The weather was stormy en route to New Orleans. Srila Prabhupada in the first class section with a pendra was looking out the window when the fasten your seatbelt announcement came just 10 minutes before the scheduled landing. Suddenly the plane dropped violently. Passengers screamed and clutched their armrests, bracing themselves. Upendra, frightened, speechless, thought, "If I have to die, it's all right, because Prabhupada is here." The downward plunge stopped abruptly, but then the plane began to lurch and roll, tossed by turbulent air currents. Overhead bins snapped open and articles fell out, bouncing off passengers and onto the floor. Srila Prabhupada turned to Upendra. "Why is it rocking?" he asked. "It's a storm," replied Upendra. You could see that Srila Prabhupada was calm. His expression was one of irritation, like some minor incident, as when his lunch would be served late. In wind and downpour, the pilot finally touched the wheels onto the runway, landing without mishap. A sigh rose from the passengers, then cheering and applause. Srila Prabhupada seemed unaffected. He asked Upendra how long a drive it would be to the temple. Srila Prabhupada and his party arrived at the large mansion on Esplanade Boulevard in heavy rain. Nityananda, the New Orleans temple president, having been given 2 weeks' notice of Prabhupada's visit, had hurriedly repainted and readied all the buildings both here and at the Mississippi farm. Despite a thorough search of the city's markets, however, he had been unable to find any bitter melon, which he had heard Srila Prabhupada took daily for digestion. Therefore, he had arranged for one of Prabhupada's secretaries to bring some from Dallas. Nityananda and the New Orleans devotees felt they were as ready for Prabhupada's visit as there ever would be. A wide marble staircase led up to the entrance, and Prabhupada, leaning on his cane, climbed it slowly as devotees threw flower petals down from the third floor. The entire distance from the car to the house, about 250 feet, was covered with a 3-foot wide white cloth leading up to the Vyasa. Prabhupada bowed down before the deities of Gauranitai, Radha Kanta, and Lord Jagannath. Sat down, but then decided it was too late in the morning to speak. Instead, he went at once to his quarters in the building next door. As soon as Srila Prabhupada reached his room, he was introduced to an official from City Hall who had come from the mayor's office to present him with an honorary welcome to New Orleans. Prabhupada graciously accepted a symbolic key to the city and a scroll welcoming and praising him as an honorable visitor. Seizing the opportunity, he began preaching to the man, treating his guest not as a city official, but as any other conditioned soul. When the flurry had abated and Srila Prabhupada had bathed, taken prasadam and rested, he called for Nityananda. When Nityananda entered, Prabhupada had sandalwood pulp on his forehead and wore a fresh garland. Nityananda offered obeisances. Alone in the room with his spiritual master, he felt embarrassed and fearful. Prabhupada picked up a photo album from his desk containing pictures of the farm in Mississippi. You know, he said, I have come especially to see your farm. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 7, The Activities of King Bharata, Text 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the verse is in prose, so I'll read it myself and then we can read the word for word together. Tayetam avirata purusha paricharyaya Bhagavati pravadamana nuraga bharaduta hridaya shaitilya prahasha veganat Manyubhidyamana Roma Pulaka Kulaka Utkantya Pravitta Pranaya Bashpa Niridavalokanayana Evam Nijaramana Runa Charanarvindana Parichita Bhakti Yogena Paripluta Paramahalada Gambira Hridaya Radhavagada Dishanastam Api Priyamanam Bhagavat Saparyam Nasasmara. Please repeat. Taya. By that. Itam. In this manner. Avirata. Constant. Purusha. Of the Supreme Lord. Paricharyaya. By service. Bhagavati,
Bhagavati,
unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Pravadamana,
Pramadamada,
constantly increasing,
constantly increasing.
Anuraga,
Anuraga,
of attachment,
attachment.
Bara,
Hara,
by the load,
Badalo,
Drutta,
Shuddha,
melted,
melted.
Hridaya,
Hridaya,
heart,
hearts.
Shaitilya,
Shaitilya,
laxity,
relaxity.
Prahashavegena,
Prahashadagina,
by the force of transcendental ecstasy,
by the transcendental
Atmani,
harmony
in his body,
in his body.
Udbijamana,
Udvijamana,
Roma,
Roma,
Pulaka,
Kulaka,
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 standing of the hair on end,
standing of the hair and end.
Outkantia,
Outkancha,
because of intense longing,
because of intense longing.
Pravritta,
Avitra,
produced,
produced.
Pranaya,
Pranaya,
Bashpa,
Pashpa,
Niruddha,
Niroda,
Avaloka,
Avaloka,
Nayana,
Maya,
awakening of tears,
awakening of tears,
of love
of love
in the eyes,
in the eyes,
obstructing the vision.
obstructing the vision.
Evam,
Evam,
thus,
thus,
Nija Ramana,
Nichamana,
Aruna,
Aruna,
Charana,
Sharana,
Aravinda,
Avinda,
on the Lord's reddish lotus feet,
and the Lord's reddish lotus feet.
Anudhyana,
Anuyana,
by meditating,
by meditating.
Parichita,
Parichita,
increased,
increased.
Bhakti Yogena,
Bhakti Yogena,
by dint of devotional service,
by dint of devotion service.
Paripluta,
By Putta,
spreading everywhere,
spreading everywhere.
Parama,
Parama,
highest,
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 highest.
Ahlada,
Ahalada,
of spiritual bliss,
of spiritual bliss.
Gambhira,
Gambhira,
very deep,
very deep.
Hridaya Radha,
Hridayavada,
in the heart,
in the heart,
which is compared to a lake,
which is compared to a lake.
Avagada,
Avagada,
immersed,
immersed.
Dishana,
Ishana,
whose intelligence,
whose intelligence.
Tam,
Tam,
that,
that.
Api,
Happy,
although, Kriyamanam,
Vidamana,
executing,
execution.
Bhagavat,
Bhagavat,
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Saparyam,
Sakariyam,
the worship,
the worship.
Na,
Na,
not,
no.
Sasmara,
Susmara,
remembered.
remember.
Translation. The most exalted devotee Maharaj Bharat in this way constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Naturally, his love for Vasudeva Krishna increased more and more and melted his heart. Consequently, he gradually lost all attachment for regulative duties. The hairs of his body stood on end, and all the ecstatic bodily symptoms were manifest. Tears flowed from his eyes, so much so that he could not see anything. Thus he constantly meditated on the reddish lotus feet of the Lord. At that time, his heart, which was like a lake, was filled with the water of ecstatic love. When his mind was immersed in that lake, he even forgot the regulative service to the Lord. Please repeat. That most exalted devotee, Maharaj Bharat, in this way, engaged constantly in the devotional service of the Lord. Naturally, his love for Vasudeva, Krishna, increased more and more, and melted his heart. Consequently, he gradually lost all attachment for regulative duties. The hairs of his body stood on end, and all the ecstatic bodily symptoms were manifest. Tears flowed from his eyes,
Tears flowed from his eyes,
so much so
so
that he could not see anything.
that he could not see anything.
Thus he constantly meditated
Thus he constantly meditated
on the reddish lotus feet of the Lord.
on the reddish lotus feet of the Lord.
At that time, his heart, which was like a lake, was filled with the water of ecstatic love. When his mind was immersed in that lake, he even forgot the regulative service to the Lord. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When one is actually advanced in ecstatic love for Krishna, 8 transcendental blissful symptoms are manifest in the body. Those are the symptoms of perfection arising from loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since Maharaj Bharat was constantly engaged in devotional service, all the symptoms of ecstatic love were manifest in his body. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Andeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shivashkan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Praye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasubhyevacha Paritanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sometimes when there's a lot of flooding, especially in a place where flooding is not very common, then the pressure of the accumulated water under the ground actually forces through cracks in the roads, in the drains, and very surprisingly, like shoots up in the air in areas where things like that just don't happen. Things like that happen a lot in tropical countries and in countries where there's perhaps not very good public construction works. And, they often have landslides and buildings collapsing due to bad foundations, these kind of things. But I remember actually about 20 years ago in Glasgow, there was a time when the weather was actually very severe here in Scotland, even more severe than in the times of now, so-called climate emergency. But around about the year 2000, there was lots of very severe rain and wind. And I remember on one day in Glasgow, and on the normally kind of like uneventful city streets, which were extremely well built with like very, very good foundations and very strong buildings, strong infrastructure in general. But all of a sudden, like water started shooting up through the pavement. So a very rare occurrence. So similarly also in our experience, even in the association of great Vaishnavas, in the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, even in the association of great devotees of the Lord. It's very rare to see the manifestation of ecstatic symptoms due to the pressure of the lake of ecstasy in the heart. Here it's described that Maharaj Bharat was so attached to Krishna, and he was constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Actually, throughout his time as the emperor, he was also constantly engaged in regular devotional service, setting the example to the citizens. And he did this for many hundreds of thousands of years. He was performing perfect sadhana bhakti. His father, Maharaj Rishabdev, was an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, identified him as being the best of his 100 sons. And all of Maharaj Rishabdev's sons were all strong devotees, so we can imagine how strong a devotee Maharaj Bharat was. So even while he was performing regular sadhana bhakti for the sake of all of the citizens, he was actually a pure devotee in heart, but he was suppressing his ecstatic symptoms to be able to continue in his duties as the emperor. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada also would suppress his ecstatic symptoms, but from time to time, when he was deep in meditation on Krishna's pastimes, or especially on Krishna's mercy, when he was meditating on Krishna's mercy, then sometimes Srila Prabhupada would shed tears and appear to be in a trance. So this is the nature of ecstatic symptoms, anubhav. This is the subject matter of most of the writings of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan and many of our acharyas in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And Srila Rupa Goswami has written his Nectar of Devotion to analyze the different manifestations of ecstasy that are present in the heart of a pure devotee. And it's a very, very vast subject matter. Actually, I was hearing recently a description of the life of Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was 3 years old when he first saw Lord Chaitanya. And he was in ecstasy even at the age of 3 years old. And then he was worshipping deities of Krishna and Balaram when he was just 4 or 5 years old. And he would constantly be singing to them, dressing them, feeding them, just treating them like family members. And then one day, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda appeared to him in a dream and informed him that they'd appeared as Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda in this age, and that they wanted Jiva to serve them and to serve Jiva Goswami's uncles, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. So at a very early age, I think it's described only at the age of 10 years old, Jiva Goswami walked to Vrindavan. And then he lived in Vrindavan for 65 years. And many hundreds and thousands of devotees came to Vrindavan to take instruction from Jiva Goswami. And many of those devotees who came were highly advanced devotees themselves, like Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasacharya. And it's described that studied under Jiva Goswami for many years, learning the intricacies of pure devotional service. So what's described in this verse, in the ecstasy in the heart of Maharaj Bharat, like Jiva Goswami or Rupa Goswami could give class on this verse for 20 or 30 years, because this is actually, once devotees, once the natural affection for Krishna is awoken in the heart of a devotee after performing strict sadhana bhakti for a certain period of time, then the heart becomes cleansed of all the dust accumulated for years, and then the natural, then the heart becomes constantly stimulated by the touch of Krishna in Krishna's various forms, in the form of the deity, in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the form of the association of pure devotees, in the form of visiting the holy places. And then the devotees then enter into a world, a wonderful world of different rasas, different emotions. So Srila Prabhupada introduced this nectar of devotion very early into ISKCON. She translated it in it was published in 1970. And of all of the books that Srila Prabhupada translated, even including the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is the most advanced book. It's actually, the teachings are also present in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but the way Srila Prabhupada writes the purports and the nature of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is that it's a book which is attractive to everyone because it's the exciting pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and his associates engaged in the preaching mission. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita is like a book which you can actually read all the way through quite quickly, and it's very inspiring. You become touched by the mood of those highly advanced pure devotees. But the Nectar of Devotion is actually not a book which you can read like that. It's a very deep study, an extensive study of the manifestations of devotional service in their various stages. But even though most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples at that time were very, very limited in their knowledge, because they didn't have access to Srila Prabhupada's books, let alone the books of the Goswamis. The only books that were published at that time were the Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, but not many devotees had Srila Prabhupada's books at this time. The Sri Upanishad was also there. And it's not that devotees could go online and listen to different lectures by different devotees. So Srila Prabhupada wanted us to hear these topics of the nature of pure devotional service and how it's manifested. He wanted his disciples to become attached to Krishna. Whatever energy or enthusiasm or abilities that Srila Prabhupada saw in his followers and disciples, he tried to engage those abilities in a way that would allow them to get a taste for serving Krishna. This was his real concern. he knew he only had a short time to give Krishna consciousness, not just to his disciples, but to the whole world. So he was very keen to establish environments in which people could get the association of devotees who had taste for Krishna consciousness, who had attraction for meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna, who had attraction for serving the deities, for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's like he puts, just last we were reading there, Srila Prabhupada, even though he was feeling sick in Dallas, he didn't want to cancel his engagement in Mississippi, even though he was very, very sick and exhausted due to traveling and inappropriate diet. So whatever our situation is, whatever our attachment is to hearing, to serving our deities, to associating with the devotees, to reading Srimad Bhagavatam, to visiting the holy places, to hearing about the holy places, whatever our level of attachment is, we can assist Srila Prabhupada by becoming dutiful servants to his devotees, and especially to those devotees who we see have got a strong attachment to serving Krishna, to serving the devotees. This is actually the greatest service we can do to Srila Prabhupada's mission. There's nothing we can do to change the world situation, and there's very little we can do to even influence the material situation that we find ourselves in. We've got our karma, we've got our conditioning, but we can always make an endeavor to serve the devotees more attentively, with more respect. Two nice devotees, Madhavananda Prabhu and Krishna Kund Matji, came here about 10 years ago, and they did a series of seminars called The Culture of Respect. And it was describing how the interactions between pure devotees are mirrored in the interactions of persons who have been nurtured in a culture which respects authority, bona fide authorities, one's parents, one's teachers, one's community leaders, and that the actual protocols and etiquettes that we can learn, the rules of work and the rules of cleanliness that we can learn, these actually assist us in gaining a affection for hearing about the activities of pure devotional service. So those of us like myself who actually were unfortunate not to imbibe this culture of respect, we may find it very difficult to overcome this conditioning. I know, speaking personally, I find it a constant struggle to actually surrender to just being dutiful, to being grateful to my superiors. I just find it constantly difficult to do that. But Krishna says, Neya Bikrama Nashosti Pratyavayo Navidyate Swapamapasya Dhamasya Trayate Mayato Bhayat. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So, and the endeavor that The endeavor that Krishna is talking about there is the endeavor to practice Buddha Yoga. So Buddha Yoga means to perform one's duties for the pleasure of Krishna and for the pleasure of Krishna's devotees. It means to perform one's duties with clear consciousness, with buddhi, with awareness, and with the determination to learn the science or the culture of respect. So that's something we can always endeavor to do at every moment. We can endeavor to be more conscious of our activities. It's like now many health professionals and social workers, care assistants, they understand the value of mindfulness to help people who are in pain, suffering from pain or post-traumatic stress disorder, or bereavement. Mindfulness is accepted as a good means to help people who have situations that are not going to change in the short term. So similarly, we can accept that whatever difficulties we're experiencing in our life, they're unlikely to change externally, but we can always make an internal adjustment. This is if we study the lives of great devotees, we can see that they're constantly making this. They're constantly making this. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he was analyzing his health. So he was analyzing, is it better for me not to travel because I've got something I need to do? I've got a long mission ahead of me. Is it better for me to rest? But then when he was thinking about the opportunities for preaching in a new city, and he was actually thinking about the farm also, he was very excited about going to the farming community. Then like the ecstasy of devotional service of preaching, like the ecstasy of the bhav of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, it like overpowered his concern for his own health. And even that concern for his health was based on pleasing his spiritual master and pleasing the Guru Parampara. So, this is what we've got to look forward to in whatever situation we are, whether we're like a devotee who's developing some strong attachment for Krishna, or whether we're a devotee who's still struggling just to perform regulative sadhana bhakti. And we've always got an opportunity to make a little endeavor. And so try to make that endeavor to assist the devotees who we see to be well situated in serving Srila Prabhupada's mission. So Maharaj Bharat had to wait a long, long time before he was freed of his kingly responsibilities. And actually Srila Prabhupada never really relinquished them. Right up to his final breath, he was preaching. And we see that many of our acharyas might perform their duty and thus in some way had to suppress their ecstatic emotions. So also as a society, sometimes it seems that ISKCON goes through stages where, and it happens in different waves in different parts of the world, where it's like an ecstatic expansion of Krishna consciousness, and many people are taking it up, and even devotees who are not very strong in their attachment to devotional service, but they become engaged with great enthusiasm in Lord Chaitanya's movement, and they experience some bliss. And then at other times, it's really hanging on to our duty and serving the mission. But we're all actually connected to that lake of transcendental ecstasy. And by reading about the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, of the Goswamis, of the other great acharyas in our line, and also by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, then we'll actually become nourished by hearing about pure devotional service. And in that way, we'll always stay in the association of devotees. So I'll stop there. And are there any questions online at Oxygen?
No.
Does any of the devotees have any questions?
How can we be more enthusiastic?
Well, Srila Prabhupada said, be enthusiastic. We can be more enthusiastic by being enthusiastic more often. It's like it's a welling up of enthusiasm. We can also be more enthusiastic by cleaning the heart. And it's like described, Cheto Darbana Marjanam Bhavaham Mahadavagni Navapanam. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years. So dust is actually very tiny particles which clog up an intricate mechanism. And actually, some machines are so complex that you can't open them up to clean them. And one way that they clean those machines is using sound vibration, using subsonic sound to clean them. So similarly, we can be enthusiastic by endeavoring to do our service to the best of our ability. But that means in small increments. It doesn't mean, okay, what's the best of my ability? I don't have to make some grand plan about calculating what the best of my ability is. But just right now, just try to be a little bit more attentive, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more cheerful, like that. And also, when we're chanting, then we can meditate on the fact that this chanting is cleansing our hearts of dust. And because the dust is very fine, we may not be able to perceive how the cleaning is going on, but we can be sure that it is going on. So that's my understanding of how we can be more enthusiastic. And we may not feel that enthusiasm, but that is enthusiasm, as we've heard several devotees explain that the English word enthusiasm is very nice because it comes from the Greek entheos, which means to be immersed in God consciousness. So, so the more we can immerse ourselves in the correct behavior, then the more we actually are enthusiastic, even though we may not perceive it in some kind of upwelling of ecstatic symptoms. But we'll just gradually be able to do the right thing. That's actually what enthusiasm means. Enthusiasm means to do the right thing, to act according to the direction that's coming down through the disciplic succession and through our authorities.
I was just listening to Prabhupada Memories, and it was a nice reflection from Hamsaduta Guru, and he was saying, Srila Prabhupada asked them, he said, how are the meetings going, because they were having these GBC meetings, and he said, well, Prabhupada, they've been going on for 2 or 3 days now. And Prabhupada started laughing. He said the meeting should be about how we can chant Hare Krishna better. he was asking about the points, there's a lot of managerial things are coming up. He said it should just be for 2 or 3 hours, and it should be about how can we chant Hare Krishna better. So I was thinking, we get all our enthusiasm, Vijivada Jivanananda, Bodhivadana, 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 all our enthusiasm is coming from that ocean, and Anandam Bodhivadana, bliss. It's an ever-increasing ocean of bliss, and our access to it is through the holy name. So really, our only real thing to sit down and discuss is how are we chanting properly. If we're chanting properly, we have no problems. Our only problems with not chanting properly. We'd be full of enthusiasm. Everything would be so easy to do. Following the principles with the devotional service, everything we have such a relish. We'll be experiencing so much rati, ruchi from performing the service. You know, it's like you wouldn't have to tell a hungry man how he needs to be feast. You wouldn't have any problem at all. So the only real problem is our ability to chant Hare Krishna. That's what it is.
And, yes. However, there is, because some of us, as I say, have really been so heavily conditioned by just seeing things in terms of our own sense gratification, then there's a difference between someone having that energy from chanting. There's a difference for someone like Srila Prabhupada or anyone who's actually really practiced a very disciplined life throughout their life, and someone who hasn't. Because someone who has practiced a very disciplined life, then they immediately see the benefits of things and they immediately appreciate them. So for Srila Prabhupada's, not all of even Srila Prabhupada's leaders, were steady in their sadhana, and some of them came from very compromised backgrounds, whereas others who basically were practicing the same sadhana, and they remained extremely strong and became exceptional leaders in their own right. I'm just saying this because, but in many ways, it's always beneficial to chant more and to appreciate the energy that we can derive from chanting the holy name. But I do also feel that it's to just quote one thing that Srila Prabhupada said and say this is the solution to everything. If it doesn't appear to be the solution to someone, then that may make that person feel completely rejected or feel completely helpless or hopeless. I'm just putting that forward. I just wanted to put that forward just from my own perspective. And, so anyway, but thank you very much thank you very much for expressing it. And, so I'll stop there. There's definitely a point to be discussed. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Krishna. Srimad Srimad. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare.
And then maybe, thank you much. I was thinking actually your stress on chanting every morning and having that stress and reading from the happiest affirmations was very fortunate.
Yeah.
That we got that.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.